This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. The 2024 Paralympic Games begin today in Paris, featuring some of the world's top athletes in adaptive sports. That includes wheelchair rugby.
Ready, go!
If you think rugby is rough, playing it in a wheelchair puts it on another level of intensity. It's also known as murder ball for good reason. Played on a basketball court, wheelchair rugby combines elements of basketball and ice hockey. Two teams go 4-on-4, racing across the floor, battling to get a ball across a goal line. That means there's a lot of tackling and crashing involved. And since this aggressive full-contact sport debuted during the 1996 Paralympic Games, Team USA has had only male players. That will change tomorrow when the American team's roster includes its very first female player, St. Louis University assistant professor Sarah Adam. In a few minutes, one of Sarah's biggest fans will share how Sarah embodies the spirit of the Paralympics and her chosen profession, and how St. Louis will be cheering her on. But first, earlier this year, St. Louis Public Radio morning newscaster Abby Larico went to a gym in Maryland Heights to meet with Sarah during her Olympic training. They spoke about what it means to Sarah to represent her country and women in her sport. Here's their conversation.
What is it about this sport that you first fell in love with?
I think really more of the community of the people that play it and getting a chance to see how important adaptive sports was to improving, their quality of life, not only physically, but also socially, and having peer support in a way that's just really real and authentic, and just going through life. Like, how do I drive a car? How do I travel on an airplane as a quadriplegic? How do I get myself up and ready to go in the morning? Like, some of those basic things that they learned how to do straight out. They come out of rehab and they come to practice, and they're surrounded by all these guys that have a lot of physical limitations and are still out there being independent and living life and living it happily and successfully. And so I loved being a part of that community that helped bring other people up. And so that's what drew me to it at the beginning.
A lot of people come to the sport because they are athletic, they are interested in team sports, and then something happens. They have an injury, they are diagnosed with something, and wheelchair rugby winds up being a new outlet for them. But that's not exactly how it happened for you.
No, so I came down to St. Louis back in 2013 to go to school at Washington University in St. Louis for occupational therapy. Had no idea that I had MS, but I wanted to combine my love of sports with my new love of OT, and so adaptive sports was a perfect fit. I went to our local wheelchair rugby practice with the Disabled Athlete Sports Association, DASA. Fell in love with the community, fell in love with the people. They're all really welcoming, had very interesting stories, fell in love with the sport, obviously high speed, full contact, really exciting to watch, but I loved learning about the chess match and the strategy and how do you utilize these people with disabilities in sport. And so absolutely fell in love with rugby and joining that community. And it wasn't until maybe a year and a half later that I started having symptoms of multiple sclerosis, got my diagnosis in 2016. And even then, still was very able, still, moving around, running, active, playing like recreational able-bodied sports. But I'd say sometime around 2018, 2019 was when that started to get harder for me to do, and classified into wheelchair rugby and became a player instead of a volunteer coach.
Talk a little bit about your day job, if you will.
So I'm a professor over at St. Louis University for occupational therapy. So practiced clinically occupational therapy for 5 years, working with people with stroke and brain injury. And then, my diagnosis of multiple sclerosis makes it harder for me to move my body and do some of the physical things that I needed to do as a therapist. So got as many years of clinical experience as I could and transitioned to being a professor, which I love, getting to teach students how to be fantastic OTs, and teaching and mentoring in the classroom kind of fit really well with my love for coaching and teaching and mentoring. I think it was always going to be the plan, so just did it in a little bit of a different way.
Wheelchair and rugby, for people who have not seen the sport or heard of the sport but know a little bit about rugby, might not think the two go together very well. But adaptive is very important because it's not just a different version of the sport. There are true changes to it to make it something that people with different levels of physical ability can do, whether it's this or other sports. So your love for adaptive sports in general. Talk about that.
Wheelchair rugby is unique and a little bit hard to explain because truthfully it doesn't have that much in common with the able-bodied rugby. So, able-bodied rugby is on a field, a grass field. A lot more players. There's some similarities like the full contact, obviously, and scoring a try, but it tends to be a little bit different when I'm trying to explain how wheelchair rugby is adapted to be able to be played for us, obviously being on a basketball court and some of the rules it's more of a mix of like hockey, basketball, football, rugby, all sorts of different sports to come into a brand new sport that's really different than any sport that's out there. So, but adapted, obviously, to be able to make it accessible for a lot of people that have more significant injuries. Hard for us as quadriplegics to compete effectively in some of the other para sports out there, adaptive sports out there, like basketball. We just don't have the function really to be an elite athlete in that sport, so we created our own one with wheelchair rugby.
You've mentioned, by the way, elite level a couple of times. What do you consider elite level?
Yeah, and I maybe oversay it, but I think it's important to note that the Paralympics are no different as far as the elite athlete level than the Olympics. We are parallel to the Olympics, so we train just as hard. We are the best at our sport in the world. We're the best of the best that are competing in their sport. And I love that atmosphere. I'm actually really excited to go to Paris to be around other elite athletes who are just, amazing at their craft and obsessed with their sport and the best at what they do. I love being around those type of people.
And when you say full contact, we mean pretty full contact here.
Yeah, so people are coming in as fast as they can push. And to give you an idea of how fast we push, my full court sprint is about 6 seconds. So I can get from one end of a basketball court to the other in 6 seconds. And you'll go that fast and crash into another wheelchair, full speed, flip over in our chairs. So it's exciting to watch.
In a metal chair, flying, and these are sometimes really big guys that you're playing against just crashing right into you.
Yeah, and wheelchair rugby is unique in that it's co-ed. It's one of the few co-ed sports in the Paralympics. So when I'm out there with the males, the 180-pound, 200-pound guys coming in and hitting me and flipping me over. And so I think as exciting as that part of the game is, for me, being a smaller female, I actually tend to focus more on the strategy and tactics and trying to think 3 steps ahead. Certainly giving the hits and taking the hits and being physical out there because you have to be. But I do love, that the fact that it's full contact, and even like they're going in and reaching in with their arms and trying to grab the ball out of your lap and punch you in the face and whatnot. It kind of breaks down that stereotype of what people typically think of when you hear about a disabled athlete, or even for me with someone with MS, I'm often told, I'm put in a bubble, told be careful, don't overdo it, take care of your body, you're fragile, and wheelchair rugby shows that we are not. People with disabilities can be active, we can be physical, we can live lives just as anybody else. There's things that we do that look a little bit different in the way that we achieve them, but I think wheelchair rugby, again, is just a great way to kind of smash some of those stereotypes.
Smash them at high speeds, yeah, quite literally. But you fell in love with this sport because of so many aspects of it that weren't necessarily personal at the time. And one might say, wow, how lucky you were to have found some kind of outlet before you even really needed it. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I think, I almost went to school up north in a different university, and I would have never been as connected to adaptive sports because there weren't as many adaptive sports opportunities up there. So I would have still had MS and a lot of the challenges that I have today, but I would not have already been connected to an adaptive sport and a community of people with disabilities that helped me feel comfortable with my identity as a person with a disability. And I often say, even my background as an occupational therapist, who better than an OT to have to manage this disease that kind of has ups and downs and things that just get thrown at you, and figure out how to turn the page and figure out how to still live life despite some of the challenges. So absolutely give a ton of credit to where I'm at today was being connected with adaptive sports, and quickly connected, because it was a pretty quick shift to, I used going to the gym and running through Forest Park and shooting basketball hoop, all that was my mental outlet, being physical and active. And I really quickly wasn't able to do that in the ways I was used to doing it. And so I could, if I did not have access to the adaptive sports equipment and knew that it was available, I would not have had access to that outlet, that physical activity. I wouldn't know how to do it. And so being able to have that quick access changed my life and put me on a better trajectory right away.
And I mean, shouting out St. Louis here a little bit, it sounds like the community here has been really good for you.
Yeah, and we're very fortunate. I think there's more popping up, but to have DASA, as I mentioned earlier, the Disabled Athlete Sports Association, is our local adaptive athletic program, and they've got all sorts of equipment from rugby chairs, basketball chairs, power soccer, cycling, track, you name it, and it's really expensive equipment. My rugby chair is about $10,000, so it's not something you just go like pick up at a local sports store, and you don't want to just like, oh, let me go buy a $10,000 chair for a sport that I don't know if I'm going to like or be good at. And so having DASA and other programs like it available and people in the community that are other adaptive athletes to learn from is rare, but really, really helpful. So I can go try wheelchair rugby, I can go try basketball, I can go try track, I can be surrounded by people that know the sport and can teach the sport. And then also that be around people that have the mindset that I do as an athlete, that want to go out there and be physical and be active, not let their disability slow them down. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things within our community here in St. Louis that have really helped me out.
This is St. Louis on the Air. We're listening to St. Louis Public Radio's Abby Larico in conversation with Sarah Adam. Sarah is an assistant professor at St. Louis University who will compete this week in the 2024 Paralympics as the first woman on the Team USA wheelchair rugby team.
MS is a complicated condition that manifests itself in so many different ways in people, and then sometimes it manifests itself one way and then it changes into something different. How does MS look for you right now?
Right now, pretty stable, thankfully. I should knock on some wood, because it's random. I have a relapsing and remitting, which means at any time I could have a relapse that takes away some function in my body, and sometimes some of that function comes back at the end of an episode, and sometimes it doesn't. And so sometimes, it's even like things with my body's overstressed or tired or hot or whatever, like little physical changes in my body can really set off some MS symptoms. And so I have to be really mindful of what's going on in my body, listen to it, take care of it in some different ways. But again, like, who better than an OT to be able to kind of adjust and adapt to whatever my body throws at me that day or that week.
And that being said, though, it must be quite complicated, because it's not like you're saying, oh, here's my specific limitation and here's what I'm working around, and then I'm going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be the exact same limitation. It could be really different day to day. It could also be very different week to week, month to month, game to game. How do you deal with training around that?
It's scary, and it's something I, obviously have to think about, as much as you kind of want to push that aside and not think about it, not understand that that's your reality. But the reality is I could have a relapse that makes it so that I can't even go compete in Paris, or we can be in Paris and I have some days where I'm feeling really good. We're playing 5 games in 5 days. That's a lot to put my body through. I think we know that it's going to ebb and flow, and there's going to be games where I'm feeling really good and games where my body's not responding the way that I want it to. And so being really close with my teammates and transparent with them on where I'm at, and we adjust how I'm playing and my role on that court depending on how my body's feeling. And we kind of do the same thing with day-to-day training. Is I'm certainly listening to my body, but I'm pushing it, trying to figure out how to mentally overcome some of when it's not responding the way that I necessarily want it to. So I think it's visualizing for the future on what that might look like, and being prepared for as many different possibilities as possible. You just don't know.
There are so many analogies quite often about a team being a family and being there for each other, even from afar, where you're all training right now in various parts of the country, only getting together in person every once in a while. But in a sport like this one, that is inherently so tough and so gritty in a lot of ways, but that also you're all there because you're dealing with some sort of physical limitations. What is that team vibe like then? How do you give each other the support that you need to say you're having a tough day and you might be in a different type of pain, but then also encouraging each other and saying, come on, we got to get out there and we got to win this? Yeah,
I think the Paralympics is a really interesting dynamic in that respect, that we've all got something really tough that we're working through. We all have some sort of disability and adversity that we've lived through, and have just a different understanding and respect for what every athlete goes through to be able to train and compete. And I think you see that within a team and my teammates, and also with other teams as well. When we're on that court, we're battling, and there are no friends out there. But off the court, I think there is just an added level of respect. But also, that's part of what I love about finding a sports community is they're like-minded, they're like me, that I'm saying I'm not going to let my disability stop me. Like there are days where I'm feeling horrible, and it's like, no, you've got to get up, you got to move, you got to put in the work, and not let your body or not let your circumstances slow you down or be an excuse.
Let's talk about this journey to Paris that we are really, looking forward to, practicing for. Everything, all signs are pointing to Paris, all the practice and the training. First off, just kind of give me, how did this all happen? How did you get to this elite level like this, that we can even be talking about competing at that high level?
Yeah, still very surreal. I don't know that when I started playing wheelchair rugby, Team USA and the Paralympics was really on my radar. I got invited to a Team USA tryout in 2021, and even then you go and you think, just that'll be fun. I get to see kind of how I match up with some of the best in the world, and an interesting experience. And then made it through the first day of tryouts, and then the second day of tryouts, and then the third day of tryouts, and I'm like, I might make this team, holy cow. And I did, and that first year I thought, I'm not going to travel. I didn't even tell my boss, because I was like, I'm not going to travel to the competitions. I'm new, and went to every competition that year, and then slowly kept working. And I mean, I'm somebody who, once I put my mind to something that I want, I'm going to work really hard and figure it out and find a way. And so, with the support of my teammates and coaches and personal trainers and family and friends, and like, it's taken a village, but figured out how to prepare my body and study a bunch of film and train hard. And yeah, now it's all like coming to fruition, and really excited. I've got less than 100 days before we're in Paris, and feeling really good about where we're at. Not only like learning the game and understanding the game plan and the strategy and tactics and relationship with my teammates, and my body feels really good. So I think I'm just excited to get there, to quite frankly. Kind of wish it was right now.
I can't imagine anybody getting to represent Team USA in anything and not being just thrilled at the stage, the level, the opportunity. The Team USA in this sport has a history. I mean, this is an elite team. You're an elite athlete on an elite team. So how has that been feeling? How have you worked to kind of make sure that you're, I don't want to say fitting in, but finding your groove with that team?
Yeah, Team USA for wheelchair rugby is steeped in history, and we've been on the podium at every Paralympics, so there's certainly that pressure to go out there and win. We're ranked #1 in the world, so when you hit that court, there's the teams that are going to go after you and give their best, and there's a level of expectation of excellence out of each of us, and I love that. I think that's what really we bring each other up with that expectation, hold each other accountable. It gives me an extra level. When I'm in bed and don't want to get up and go out and work out early in the morning, it's like, no, you got to put in the work, because when you're on that stage, when you're on that court, you want to be able to perform, and you want to be able to perform for yourself and your team in the U.S. And, it's a phenomenal motivator, and I try to look at it more as that, a motivator and an opportunity, than letting some of those nerves creep in on what that really means and the pressures of it.
Well, not to add more pressure to it in this conversation, but you are also representing women. You are the first woman to make this team and go this far. It's a stereotypical standard question I have to ask. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, and when I was first kind of getting some recognition for being one of the only females, and it's a male-dominated sport, and it's an exciting story, particularly right now with the rise of women in sports and female sport and the equity of it, which is really exciting, and I love being able to be a small part of that conversation. But 2 or 3 years ago, when I first started and was getting some attention for being a female, I didn't have a big role on the team yet, and so I kind of felt uncomfortable with some of the attention, and it actually forced me to work harder. I was like, if I'm going to get the attention for being a female on this team, I want to make sure it's because I'm a relevant athlete on this team, like athlete first, a contributor for this team, and she's a female, and so I think that's something that's motivated me to work harder. But I love the opportunity, as I said, to be able to speak about women in sports and the importance of it, and in particular playing a sport that's not necessarily seemed typical for a woman to play in. I think just adds an extra level that can show future generations of young girls, like, don't be limited by what's typical. If it's something you're passionate about and something you enjoy doing, go out there and do it anyway.
What do you want people to take away from your story?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to utilize people's love for sport to help them better understand disability and disability sport, and understand that our lives aren't less than just because we move differently, we play a sport a little bit differently. We still have very fulfilling, exciting lives and purpose, and I think that's what I hope people can see through watching Paralympic sport.
What do you want people to not say about your story?
I don't want people to say that we're an inspiration or that I'm an inspiration. I think we're just out there competing and being an athlete and doing what we love and doing it at a high level. And, if you want to say that whatever we're doing and achieving at that elite level is an inspiration, that's fine. But just like going out and living life as a person with a disability, that's just my circumstances. I don't know that's necessarily anything inspiring.
So you want the attention to the sport and the ability to persevere and all of that. It's not with the asterisks of, with their disabilities, with what's going on in their lives. It's, look what I'm doing, period.
Exactly. I want it to be, I'm an elite athlete first. I have the disability second. We're achieving amazing things, and it's exciting, and wanting to highlight that versus our disability aspect of it.
That was St. Louis Public Radio's Abby Larico speaking with Sarah Adam, the first woman to make the USA's wheelchair rugby team. Adam is set to compete in the Paralympic Games starting tomorrow. We need to take a short break. When we come back, we'll meet a SLU colleague of Sarah Adam, who's also one of her biggest fans. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. Welcome back. I'm Elaine Cha. When SLU professor and Team USA wheelchair rugby player Sarah Adam hits the floor for her first Paris Paralympics match tomorrow morning, there will be a squad of fans cheering, and not only because she's the first woman to make the U.S. team. Among them will be Wendy Stav. She's professor and chair of the Department of Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy at St. Louis University. And she's here to share why she'll be among that crowd. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So before we get to that watch party, we just heard STLPR's morning newscaster, Abby Larico, talking with Sarah in an interview from a couple months back. Now, something that didn't make it into the final cut of that interview is that Sarah kept the fact that she'd made the 2024 Paralympics wheelchair rugby team, and as the first woman to make that team, on the down low. So, Wendy, what was it like to find out?
Well, we didn't really know she was in contention, but she did get notification when she was at work, and it was a little surreal when she popped out of her office and said, I'm going to play wheelchair rugby for Team USA.
And what was the reaction like among all your colleagues?
We were a little stunned. It's not something we're accustomed to hearing. So we were shocked, we were surprised, we were excited to have a celebrity amongst us.
Right. Now, Sarah's being an occupational therapist, and what she's done since she received her multiple sclerosis diagnosis. I mean, these come together in a really poignant way, doesn't it? Why is that the case?
Well, occupational therapy is grounded in the idea that you can achieve health through meaningful doing. And for Sarah, playing sports is very, very meaningful. It's something that she's always loved. It's an occupation that's part of her and part of her identity. So along comes this multiple sclerosis diagnosis and subsequent health declines, but she's continued to pursue health and well-being through active engagement in something that she loves, and that actually promotes her health.
Yeah.
So she embodies the values of the profession.
And how is it that affects the kind of rapport Sarah has with the students that she works with at SLU?
I think because she presents as so capable, even though she travels through the department with a disability, she's really exemplifying the potential that clients can have. And I think that's really important for the students to see that their future clients aren't fragile and incapable, but rather they need to look for what are the capabilities that we can help enable.
Now, one of the things that I saw on your department's Instagram is that there have been people in Chicago, for example, and they've taken selfies or pictures with these big billboards that are around the city that feature Sarah. I mean, how meaningful is that, not only for the students at the school, but for this profession of occupational therapy that stands to grow over the next 10 years?
Well, hopefully it puts us on the map even more and really highlights how our role facilitates doing. So those selfies are students who travel around the country and do internships, and they're, away from their home base because they're not at school, and yet they see that familiar face of Sarah Adam, and it is exciting. It's really exciting.
And occupational therapy is not necessarily something that many people know about, right? I mean, do you have any ideas as to why this profession is one that is not recognized sort of the way that other professions like nursing are?
I think that you don't see us portrayed as much in popular media and movies and those sorts of things. And part of it is because what we do looks so commonplace. So we'll help somebody with their ordinary everyday lives, things like using the restroom and taking your dog for a walk and driving your car, things that we all take for granted. So when we do the work, it looks so ordinary and commonplace, yet we're using a very honed skill set to be able to analyze that doing and figure out what modifications they need. So I think that's why it's a complicated history.
Right. So as far as the Olympics is concerned, I mean, something that's uniquely inspiring about it, I think, is that it celebrates people who are so good at something, but does that celebrating in a way that sort of highlights how extraordinary and ordinary a person is all at once. How does Sarah embody that?
Wow, I think it's interesting because she's such a humble person, yet anybody who's an Olympian or Paralympian is an elite athlete. That is, we're not talking about your average person who goes to play pickleball on the weekends.
Right.
These are elite athletes, and it really just highlights the range of capability of people regardless of your disability or health status.
So the watch party, the last question here, what's the mood around it, and is there anything special prepared?
Yeah, we're excited for the watch party. So most of the department has special shirts, T-shirts that we had made up that have a Sarah Adam logo on it. It has a diagram of a wheelchair rugby player, but has her signature ponytail coming off the back of her head.
Oh, that's great.
And so it'll be in the department. We're having it catered by our nutrition and dietetics department. So there will be breakfast for everybody. And we're really, really excited to just celebrate Sarah.
Wendy, thanks so much for joining us today, and have a great time at tomorrow's party.
Thank you.
This episode was produced by Emily Woodbury
and by Elaine Shaw. Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.